spooky them? Hello, and welcome to our first spooky episode of Creepy Review, where we're reviewing your creep media, good, bad, and ugly, and even spooky. I'm your host, Bruce, and today I'm with my co-host, Justin.
Greetings and bienvenue from beyond the grave. Here at Queer Peer Reviews, we will be reviewing your favorites and not so favorites of film, TV, and video games with either a queer theme or queer characters and more.
Now, you may have noticed that our host, Jamie, is not here. Well, because she got eaten by Eldritch Horror, but also because for us, we will be talking on the more animated side of LGBTQ plus representation. So in honor of Spooky Month, we will be reviewing Netflix animated original Dead End Paranormal Park. Whew. And that was the intro. So the show starts off with sort of like a mysterious scene when I guess one of the employees of the said park, I guess she's like getting chased by something, and it sort of cuts off at the end where she gets attacked by this little spirit. Basically, our two characters, we're gonna start off, our first character is Barney, who is a trans boy, who also has issues with his family's support for him. His family supports him, but there's an issue with the grandma, apparently throughout that basically he starts talking about throughout the show, where his grandma apparently has said some things to Barney that, you know, that was most likely transphobic / homophobic. He runs out of the house heading towards a job interview at a sort of amusement park after Pauline Phoenix, who was actually voiced by a drag queen named Miss Coco Peru. And on the way to the interview on the bus, Barney meets with his classmate and job candidate,
Norma, a young Pakistani girl who seems to have a bit of a hyperfixation on the park and Pauline herself. Over the course of the series, she's shown knowing tons of lore and specific anecdotes about her life and her career that Barney just doesn't seem to even know.
And Norma has social anxiety, which usually derives from her being on the spectrum as well, which makes both of these characters very well inclusive. As soon as they arrive at the park, they go meet their alleged boss at the office, which actually they meet a Courtney, who is a little demon who actually just lured them there to sacrifice them to their big demon king, Tamalukas.
Tamalukas is the major, well, seems to be the major antagonist for most of the show. Over the course of the ride from Barney's house to the amusement park, there is a dog that is with them named Pugsley, who is a pug. And Pugsley is Barney's dog and almost confidant. Barney seems to have a very close relationship with Pugsley because he's the only one who he can really talk in depth to. What ends up happening is, over the course of this first episode, Pugsley ends up sacrificing himself to protect Barney and Norma and the entire world, really, from Tamalukas. Yeah.
And then Pugsley gets possessed by Tamalukas, which sort of leaves like a floating power dog.
Exactly. They are able to somewhat subdue Tamalukas in the first episode, but
yeah, after the havoc of trying to chase them, they use a camera. They take a picture because they learned, I guess Norma knows the lore that apparently if you take a photo of a possessed person, it captures the spirit in the photography. So they take the idea where they go to this roller coaster that has a camera attached, and
they get that snapshot, that perfect snapshot coming down the log ride at Paranormal Park. So they are able to somewhat capture his soul, but a fragment of it stays, of Tamalukas' soul, that is. A portion of it stays inside of Pugsley. And as a result, Pugsley becomes sentient and is able to do magic.
Very minimal magic though, not full.
Yeah, nothing tremendous, no fireballs in DeadEndia, but definitely something subdued and small.
And despite those strange events, Barney and Norma still decide to work at the park as security guards, mostly because Courtney pleaded to them to stay. But the other part of it is that Barney also decides to actually stay at the park and not return back home because he doesn't want to deal with the confrontation of his parents. He doesn't want to confront his parents anytime soon.
I also think to some extent they were also grappling with the fact that demons are real, and they now know that demons and ghosts both exist. Maybe that's just me.
So it's just him, Pugsley, and Courtney. And we also get introduced to our wonderful number one character, Gord.
Gord.
We got Gord.
Gord on set, everyone.
Yep. The next day, Norma and Barney meet the rest of the employees, two of which stand out, which is Logan, aka Logs, and Baja, who also likes to go by Def's Life for some reason. Ironically, Logan becomes the love interest to Barney, and Baja becomes the love interest from Norma.
Over the course of the first season, Barney spends a really large amount of time coming to terms with their family
Quarrel?
Yeah, family issues. It's a lot of him avoiding his family when the family shows up at the park, or not answering phone calls, or he avoids his brother actually for an entire episode until his brother inevitably finds out later on in the series. But he spends a lot of time really trying to avoid his family and avoid having that confrontation with his grandma, with his mom, with his dad. That whole conversation, he avoids it like the plague the entire time.
So while Barney is dealing with his issues, Norma is on the case of figuring out what is up with Pauline Phineas' amusement park.
Over the course of the show, there are many spooky incidents, such as a zombie outbreak, demons, and even petrification. The series plays with a lot of horror tropes, so there's a lot of homages to like classic horror films and horror tropes.
In one of the episodes, the employees of the park try to do this little team building event with this mysterious man named Harmony, who turns out to be revealed a fear-festering demon named Harm Many. And one thing about this demon is that he feasts on fears of others. This episode was pretty big because it revealed a lot of the deepest fears with all the employees, especially with Barney and Norma.
Barney is extremely afraid of having that confrontation with his family and the grandma specifically, the things that she's allegedly said, because nothing is actually stated directly in the show, but the way that Barney reacts to it is that of, outright, monsters and murder and things like that. It very much seems like it's more than just being misgendered or anything like that. It seems to be that the grandmother very much doesn't accept or outright admonishes or potentially threatens Barney.
And other than that, the most biggest fear is that the fact the parents do not defend him.
Yeah,
they just let it happen.
Completely. They try to keep the peace, and in attempting to do that, they end up alienating their own son and putting him at risk, where he essentially runs away. And in a lot of cases, that doesn't end as nice as getting a job somewhere. So
yeah, and Norma's, which is actually funny, Norma's biggest fear is a lot of things. Ironically, because of the amount of her fears, it ends up defeating Harmony because she overloads a lot of fears. And it just sort of explodes. And in a later episode, we see Barney trying to sort of talk to his crush, Logan, another worker, obviously. And they're sort of stuck in this little scenario where they have to be in the sort of like in the waiting line of a love ride.
One of those like
love boat rides.
Like, yeah, you're in a boat together.
And it's funny. Logan's job is just to see how long is the wait line, just by measuring it. But Barney takes the opportunity to wait in line with him to try to talk to him in ways. And he's nervous about himself. He doesn't feel like relaxed with himself. So he ends up getting the job of... He ends up asking for his friends for help by using Pugsley's power to see if they could, swap his mind with the others and see if they could do any better, which does not, and it ends... Well, it doesn't really end horribly, but it's very, very messy throughout. It was like a whole mess entirely.
Meanwhile, the entire time there's two like black women that seem to they talk about that they're in a relationship literally right next to them. They're like trying to like hype them up the whole time, and it's just it's wild.
It was a wild ride. But what's interesting about that episode though is that they also reveal something with the park itself, where they meet, I guess, one of the missing employees spirit in this sort of spiritual realm. So while Barney is not in control of his body, he's actually in this little spiritual realm with his other souls, and one of them is one of the missing employees. Much doesn't go further into it because nothing gets revealed, but Norma also decides to look more into it, and it turns out that the missing people that she was looking for were not missing at all. They were still at the park. She just didn't notice it.
Whole time.
reveals more
Mystery.
questions. Like, if they weren't missing,
Precisely.
so what are they still doing there? It is also revealed that one of the janitors is actually the first Pauline Phoenix impersonator. And the janitor is also just as shady about the whole scenario as well. While Norma tries to investigate with the help of Barney, they walk into this other attraction where the TV just randomly plays a commercial Pauline Phoenix was in, but was never aired. The ghost of Pauline Phoenix appears. She appears as like this green, transparent ghost. And it turns out Pauline Phoenix was dead the whole time. So, because it's a paranormal event, Norma and Barney managed to jump into the TV because of Pugsley's, I guess, magic opens a portal in the TV. And they sort of get trapped into a TV world where they go through basically all of Pauline Phoenix's like movies, including at the end of the commercial, which showed that while she was on a swing set over a cliff trying to promote an insurance, she fell off the cliff and died from her fall. But not only that, in the footage also shows the janitor who was the original impersonator was there as a stunt double, was trying to see Pauline Phoenix, but she was already dead. But it also shows her getting possessed by Pauline Phoenix herself and then taking over that body. And so the lore is that all the impersonators that gone missing were just hosts for Pauline to take over just to keep this sort of temporary immortality going on about.
Norma has to come to terms with the fact that her icon, her
role model,
her hero, or heroine rather, is kind of like a possessive demonic ghost and needs to be dealt with. And so she kind of for a brief moment tries to hide in the confines of the TV world, holding on to a bygone era, a past that doesn't exist, which I also think is kind of telling of the sort of story overall and theme that DeadEnd is trying to really showcase. This idea of the past, tradition, and this idea of a gender binary being not so important, and rather that maybe it's time to release those things and relinquish them and move forward and make that step into something that might not be always, the most comfortable thing for people, but is ultimately the better way to live, which is in your truth.
Norma's plan that she made was to use Pugsley's power to sort of disguise herself as an exact copy of Pauline Phoenix's body, which then does get the interest of the ghost version. And
not after a sparkling musical number.
There's a whole musical episode, but I'm not going to get into that. So Norma successfully, baits Pauline Phoenix to possessing her, but also she didn't realize the plan Pauline Phoenix has. And so what they plan to do is use the same ritual that was used for Tel Maluchis against Pugsley, where they seal the demon permanently in the host instead of a temporary thing. So Barney tries to stop the ritual from happening, to save Norma, but it falls through until Pugsley decides to allow the Demon King back to his body fully to stop Pauline and the ritual entirely. And so yes, they do stop Pauline Phoenix. They separate the spirit from Norma and Pauline, and finally free her. Unfortunately, that is not the complete end, because all seemed pretty well and done, despite Pugsley now being fully possessed by Tel Maluchis. It also reveals that Tel Maluchis' sister is also has the same ambitions as the Demon King and wants to also take over the world, in which she opens a portal to the park and releases a huge demon army and also petrifies every guest there, including the parents of Norma and Barney. Unfortunately, Barney and Norma also get petrified, but because Tel Maluchis was in Pugsley for a while, he also developed his own bit of humanity and decided that he didn't want to rule the world anymore and stops his own sister successfully. And after defeating his sister and, sending back the demon army back to hell, he unpossesses Pugsley and also returns back home by himself.
So once the curtain closes, the world is saved from a demonic apocalypse. However, the knowledge of an apocalypse at all is a conundrum in and of itself.
It also alerts some angels up there, which is also itself a preview for season 2. That's another. But besides that, in a good way too, Barney makes amends with his parents and gets close to Logan. Norma has also gotten closer with Baja, and Corson decides the park is their real home, especially with Barney and Norma. Alrighty, so that was the entirety of Dead End Park season 1. And we're gonna start the ratings. So here at Creepy Reviews, we'll be basing our ratings off the 5 categories from 1 to 10, giving us a grand total of 100.
Let's start with representation. How well did Dead End really get into those themes and characters of queerness? They're gay as fuck, dude!
All right, so our rating for representation is, I give it a 9, you gave it an 8.
I gave it an 8.
An 8, really? I want to hear what you say. Why an 8?
Well, the casting and stuff in the show, or for the show, is fantastic. But there's a lot of stuff I feel like within the actual continuity of the show isn't fully explained, and I think in the second season it could get even more like intense. I think it could get even they could have even more characters that are more what's it called? Either more direct, because obviously the main character is a trans guy, but there's more. There's more that they could do. There's more representation they could have, and I'm excited to see what they do. That's why. I might even pick up the book because I'm really.
I might do as well. Maybe I might set a review. Who knows? Okay, I agree with that. Yeah, so 9. I think it's
definitely up.
Definitely it's up there for me. So yeah, obviously representation is probably the biggest highlight for this show. So yeah, I totally agree. Let's move on to our next topic: closet. If you aren't out yet, would this show encourage you to, get out of the closet or not? All right, and our ratings for the closet is 8.5. What'd you do?
I said full 9.
Full 9, 8.5. I did 8.5 because mostly at first it was like the fear with the grandma and the whole like. I was like, oh no, my parents are not defending me, and there's a lot.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of like kids like that, or people that experience that with their parents, that their parents can support them, but they won't defend them when it comes to their other relatives.
Which is really like the crux of it. You know what I mean? It's like having your cake and eating it too. You can't say you care and then completely look the other way when like somebody is being rude or outright assaulting you or whatever it is. And that's why I think I put it at a 9. I like the fact that it showcases that people aren't always going to be perfect, and like someone who's thinking about coming out really needs to come to terms with whether or not you're, in that safe space, whether it be your home, whether it be your friends. It's important to know that there are people out there who support you. And even Barney himself, he goes through that in the second episode. He has internalized some things about the way people are, the way people should be, and all that stuff. So it's I think all of the information is there. It's just in different ways, which is kind of a little bit of the inverse of what I was saying last time about how much they could show. I think specifically as far as trans rep goes, like, and coming out of the closet in that specific regard, I think that's really, really big in here. And next up, Originality.
And the ratings for Originality. Wow, Jesus. So yeah, 6.7. You gave it a imagine 4.
Yeah.
Damn, the writing's gonna be bad. So Originality. To be fair,
we're like horror nerds.
We're horror nerds, and the whole premise of the show, it goes in a lot of aspects for a lot of other premises of two main characters going into an area where it's like very high paranormal activity wise. It's been done before. I won't say the show, but a lot of people may know what I'm talking about. But otherwise, it's not like entirely a horrible premise. It's still really well done, especially with all the parks and all.
I'm personally not a big fan of ghosts as a result of some of the stuff.
So this is more of a personal rating for you?
No. The thing about it is that there's other aspects to the show. Like there's a lot going on in reality. There's demons, there's angels, there's ghosts. I mean, who knows? We might get witches next season. I'm really more tempted to read the source material. I think for the show, it's kind of a lot, and it gets a little messy at times. And even with that, there's a lot, at least for me, I think I'm less of a horror fan than you are. And so maybe I didn't pick up as much as you did. But I feel like a lot of it, like, again, even though it was messy, was kind of predictable, at least for me. And so that's why it's hard. It would be hard for me to give it a 5, because it's not necessarily okay. It's like it's a little bit predictable and messy. So that's, It's not terrible. It's not abysmal, but it's just not for me.
Wow. All right. So, on to the writing. And our ratings is a 6. What'd you give it?
6.
A 6. Oh, we're on the same shape. Yeah. So when while we're watching the show, the dialogue was a bit weird, and some of the pacing of some of the shows was a bit off. I mean, yeah. So the story-wise, sure, yes, it was good. Dialogue-wise, it was just overall strange. I mean, you know better than I do. Don't give it a 9.
The thing is, I didn't read it. We didn't read the script. We didn't read the book. And so any book that gets a full, like the whole, what's the word? The whole process of getting something, especially animated in this day and age, our Lord 2020 with this horrible HBO thing, but anything that gets animated, the process of getting something from book to television screen is huge. And again, I haven't read it, but if the writing got it that far, the writing for the book, I would give it a 9, because it has to be fantastic to get to this point. And they had to use that source material to make the show.
Are you giving it a 9?
But the show specifically is a 6. So it goes both ways. It's a 6 and a 9 at the same time.
This is the first time? Is this the first time in Creepy Reviews history?
If we're talking about the show, we'll stick with the 6. But
okay, just stick with the 6.
Those are our full, at least my full thoughts.
The book may be a different episode.
That's what we'll have to get in the book. And also the second season. Who knows? It could get crazy.
Maybe the writing will get better, hopefully. But yeah, for now, our ratings are 2 6s.
Yeah. Last but not least, our feelings on the show.
Overall feelings? 7.5, and you gave it a?
Just a solid 7.
Solid 7, yeah. So, overall, our feelings. I think the show is still entertainment in its own way. Like I said, writing-wise, a bit iffy. I did like some of the animation. They do include a bit of like a 3D and 2D element involved with it. Some of the designs were just like not as good. Like demons, the demon designs were horrible. I didn't like them.
Yeah.
The demon designs were not that.
Aside from Gord. Gord is peak.
Gord is the
design.
reason why there is a 7.
Gord alone is like 5. You know what I mean? Gord really pushes everything
Gord is the
up.
5 in this one.
There's also the angel, which I found interesting, and I want to see more of how that's going to play out. But a lot of the other horror elements in the show, I don't want to say they seem like an afterthought. I unfortunately think that the illustrations in the books, which I haven't seen either, they cannot be the same as animation. Animation as a process, you have to simplify a lot of things, and I think there was a lot more communicated information in the other designs or even in the written form. So the show as a whole, there's a lot of different things that add to this and detract from this, but I think again, I'm not the target demographic for this sort of show. I do think that it is important that this sort of representation stands and that it is accessible. I think that for somebody who's young, who's struggling with this sort of stuff, this is something that could really, really help them. So I want to give it this lucky number, this lucky 7, so that it can continue to provide that sort of light and hope and warmth for people who are going through, just growing up and living.
Yeah, and despite what the writing and all, I do want to see season 2 and see if they, they do what they do further with the plot of the Angels and all, and I do look forward to the next season, just to see.
And now for our QPR total.
From the Ghost of Jamie. And it is a C.
I see what you mean.
It's a C. So, but we definitely believe this show can have better potential. And that was our review for Netflix original animated show, Dead End Paranormal Park.
Have a wonderful, spooky season.
And don't forget, we have links down below in the description for the Trevor Project and other donation links, including our social media handles. Have a spooky season, and hope for you to subscribe, and please follow us. Thank you very much.
All right,
that's it. Show's all right, get off. Get out. Get out.
You can't kill me.
out.
I'm already dead. Where would I go? Double hell? Ah!